So, a new Georgia law will make local races in several metro Atlanta counties nonpartisan. It's also generating some major political debate these days. Supporters say it could reduce polarization in local government. Critics argue it could confuse voters. Let's talk more about it with a longtime political science professor, Charles Bullock from the University of Georgia. Great having you on the show, sir. Thank you for your time.
Good to be with you.
So, we're talking about House Bill 369 here. What exactly does it mean for voters?
Okay, what it means is that for a number of offices at the local level in 5 counties in Metro Atlanta, uh, these races are going to show up down where the judges' races do. Now, those are nonpartisan, and these are going to be nonpartisan. So, you know, in the past, up until this point, there would be a separate Democratic ballot for these offices and a Republican ballot, which would offer an alternative set of candidates. So it will wipe out the partisanship. So these now be nonpartisan positions. Everybody can vote on the same list of candidates.
You mentioned 5 counties here: Clayton, Cobb, DeKalb, Fulton, Gwinnett. I'm just curious to know why this applies to just five and not the other 154 counties across Georgia.
Well, that's exactly right. That is the big question, right? Yeah, clearly, it looks like if those counties are being targeted. Now, one of the rationales for doing this is that this gives a person who would say these are all heavily Democratic counties, but it would now give a Republican an opportunity to have a direct input on the individuals who are likely to be making decisions at the local level. And those decisions made at the local level are going to have much more impact on the average citizen's life than what is, say, being done in Congress. Good argument there, but if you want to apply that to Republicans living in these heavily Democratic counties, then it should also have been applied to Democrats living in more than 100 heavily Republican counties in the state, because the same rationale would apply there. So it does look like this is something which is more motivated by partisanship rather than by expanding the opportunities for individuals in the minority party
Hmm.
to have ability to influence who their local government officials are going to be.
Does this only apply to have an R and a D on the ballot next to your name? I mean, what's to stop me from running as a Democrat or Republican and saying that the entire time on the campaign trail? Can I still do that?
Yes, you can certainly do that. Now, I assume the way the ballot will be set up, it will not indicate partisanship. It'll probably go in ahead and still indicate whether you're an incumbent. But as we're seeing right now in these two contests for positions on our state Supreme Court, yeah, these have become partisan in the sense that two challengers, two sitting Republican judges, are obviously Democrats. And I think they're getting money from Democratic sources to support this. So it will not necessarily mask what an individual's partisan leanings are, although it will not show up on the ballot.
I want to dive in a little deeper into some of the arguments both for and against. Supporters are saying, this is local government. You really shouldn't be having hyper partisan races to begin with. And Dr. Bullock, there are municipal races across the state that are already nonpartisan. This is going to apply to several county races. Is there evidence that this will reduce partisanship?
I think it probably will. And there was a statement made many, many years ago that there's no partisan way to fix potholes in the street. So it's that idea is that these jobs, particularly something like clerk of court, yeah, there's not a Democratic or Republican way to run a court. You're simply making sure that their jury pools and things like that show up. So that in that sense, for these positions, does sound like that partisanship shouldn't make much difference. It shouldn't make a whole lot of difference in how your district attorney or your solicitor goes about deciding what cases to bring. Now, what we've seen over the last several years is that first Republicans were claiming that Democrats were weaponizing the justice system. And certainly now, with Donald Trump's Justice Department, it has been very much weaponized against Democrats. So, yeah, this is happening at least it looks like it maybe at the national level, but it's not clear that it's happened at the local level. Now, there were claims by Republicans that Fani Willis's suit that she brought against a number of Republicans was partisan in its background. So that probably is what really is the incentive which brought all of this about.
On the other side of this debate, you have the critics who say removing the party labels going to make it harder for voters who kind of maybe rely on that shortcut when they're in the voting booth.
Right.
But isn't there then a counter argument that forces voters to pay closer attention to the candidates and the issues instead of just voting straight ticket?
Well, we would hope that's the case, and certainly now, because there's so much information available online. If you want to learn about a candidate, what that candidate stands for, their background, very, very easy to do. It's never been easier. But we also know that for particularly kind of offices that appear way down the ballot, it's not likely that many voters are going to do that. Now, I would argue it'd be good if they did, sure, and cast an informed ballot, but it will make it difficult for individuals who maybe go in and they know who they want to vote for president, governor, senator, but once you get down to clerk of court, yeah, they have no idea.
We heard from some local district attorneys who were critical of this bill. They're going to be impacted by this. They gave us a statement who said they said this is a blatant attempt by Republicans to give their candidates an edge in Democratic counties by hiding their party affiliation from voters. They say give them an edge. But I'm wondering, do you think this gives an edge to the Republican Party, or does it even the playing field for everyone by removing the D's and the R's?
Yeah, I think yeah, it does create a potential that an individual who is a Republican could get elected, where in a heavily Democratic county like, say, Clayton or DeKalb, there's really no realistic chance, I think, that a person who has an R beside their name could win. So it does open the door in that situation. It may well be, though, that if, say, we're going into a runoff, so it's down to just two candidates, and one is a Democrat and one's a Republican, I would expect then that Democrat is going to make it very clear that, I am the Democratic candidate who is running here, and therefore mobilize, bring partisanship into it in that sense.
Those same district attorneys in Fulton and DeKalb, they've called the law unconstitutional. Legally speaking, how vulnerable do you think this bill is to court challenges?
Yeah, I think the basis for that might be that it singles out these five counties. Now, again, if it were passed statewide and said, okay, we're making all of these positions nonpartisan, obviously there would be, I would think, no basis for arguing that it's in sense unconstitutional in the sense that it singles out and treats some parts of the state differently than other parts of the state. So I think the fact that it applies only in these five counties does at least raise that prospect that it could be challenged.
While I have you here, Dr. Bullock, it's the last day of early voting here before the primary. I'm going to go out and vote today. I was doing my research last night, and it's a crowded field. It's a big ballot. I'm just curious to know what you make of this primary and this moment in Georgia politics.
Yeah, there are all kinds of options here. And one of the things which has resulted in there being so many candidates on both the Democratic and the Republican side is that in some sense this is a generational election. And by that I mean we have an open seat for governor, open for lieutenant governor, open for attorney general, open for secretary of state. So arguably the four most significant statewide officials don't have incumbents in them. When you don't have incumbents, then you find a lot more candidates who will step forward because it's hard to beat an incumbent. Where an open seat, it's more like a jump ball situation. And we haven't had a situation like this since 1998. That's why I say a generational election. So a voter who really wants to be well informed would have to spend quite a bit of time online going through and looking at the platforms of the candidates within the party in which they're going to vote. We also have some contested judgeships, which we don't necessarily always have. And again, there, when we get down to those judgeships, you don't have the party queue. So you need to do even more research, arguably, to figure out which of those individuals would be a better choice for you.
And what are the chances you think we see runoffs in some of these big races?
I would be very surprised if we don't. Under Georgia law, you have to win with a majority. And so situations where you've got multiple candidates, like we do for governor, for lieutenant governor, almost certainly those are going to go to runoffs, which means we'll be back at the polls or early voting within the next 4 weeks.
Dr. Bullock, it's great having you on the show. Hope you had a great school year. Hope you enjoy your summer, and hope to talk soon. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
You're welcome.